All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a deep dive into what it's really like to work at EY, one of those massive Big Four accounting firms.
EY, yeah.
But we're not just skimming the surface. We're going deep.
Yeah.
We've got hundreds of employee reviews from Glassdoor. Think of it like we're peeling back the layers,
You're getting past the PR.
Exactly, to understand what it's actually like to work there, warts and all.
And it's crucial to get that unfiltered perspective. EY has a 3.7 out of 5-star rating on Glassdoor.
Which sounds okay, right?
Decent, maybe average for the finance industry.
Yeah, but like a movie rating, what does that even tell you?
Right, a 7 out of 10. Could be amazing, could be terrible.
Exactly. So we're here to break it down. What do those stars actually mean? And ultimately, is EY the right fit for you?
And the reviews paint a fascinating picture, definitely mixed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's start with the good stuff. Many employees consistently talk about the great people and the supportive culture at EY.
That's a good sign.
They also mention good benefits and that the offices are well organized. But I think what's most interesting for our listeners are the opportunities for career growth.
Makes sense. It's EY, a global giant.
Exactly. It's a natural draw for ambitious professionals.
But it's not just about climbing the ladder, right? You mentioned supportive environment. That seems crucial, especially early in your career.
Absolutely. Having colleagues who mentor you, share their knowledge, create a positive atmosphere, that's invaluable. There's one review from December 1st of this year that sums it up perfectly. Good culture and supportive environment.
Straight and to the point.
Right. Sometimes the simplest words say it all.
I can imagine that being a huge draw for someone who thrives in collaborative environments and loves continuous learning.
For sure. But let's be real, no workplace is perfect. We have to talk about the downsides.
Hit me with it. What are some of the less glamorous bits that pop up in these reviews?
Well, the big one, and it comes up repeatedly, is work-life balance. Long hours seem to be baked into the EY culture.
The age-old struggle.
Right. And there's potential for travel, depending on the role, which many reviewers mention. And of course, compensation is a big factor for everyone. Some employees express concern about salary, especially in certain locations.
So the classic trade-offs, particularly in a demanding field like finance.
Exactly.
You said long hours are baked into the culture. Why is that? Is it the nature of the work or something more?
It's a great question. Is it client demands? Internal pressure? Probably a mix of both.
I'd imagine so.
But to illustrate, here's a review from October 18th. Long working hours during peak. However, the learning experience outweighs the hours worked.
Interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Highlights the potential rewards.
Exactly, that steep learning curve that comes with the long hours.
Makes you wonder, for whom does the learning outweigh the time commitment? That's a personal decision.
For sure. Everyone would weigh those factors differently.
It seems there's a lot of nuance to uncover here. These individual experiences, what else are they telling us?
Definitely. The individual stories add so much richness, going beyond just a list of pros and cons. You see the complexities, the highs and lows, the whole range of emotions people experience working at EY.
Give us a glimpse into those journeys then. What kind of narratives are we seeing?
Well, one review, also from October 18th, mentions office politics and blame shifting as major downsides.
Ooh, office politics.
Right. It suggests potential challenges beyond just the workload. It points to the interpersonal dynamics that can make or break the experience.
Sounds like there's more to this story than meets the eye.
Definitely. But remember, we're dealing with a spectrum here, so I'm sure there are contrasting views, even some really positive ones amidst the more critical ones.
Oh, for sure. I was just thinking that. What about those glowing accounts?
Here's one from November 25th. Just says, NA, no cons whatsoever, good company.
Wow, total opposite. From blame shifting to no cons whatsoever, it seems like the EY experience can be wildly different depending on the person, their team, their role, and who knows what else.
Exactly. That's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. It highlights the importance of looking at multiple viewpoints. A single review, whether amazing or awful, is just one piece of a very big puzzle.
It really does emphasize how subjective the experience can be, even within the same company. So you can't rely solely on a company's overall rating or reputation. You got to dig deeper, consider the nuances, like you said, piece together the puzzle.
Absolutely. So are you ready to see if any patterns emerge, as we zoom out and look at the reviews as a whole?
Okay, let's zoom out. What trends pop up when we look at the big picture?
One thing that's consistent, regardless of whether the reviewer is happy or unhappy overall, is those long working hours. It appears to be a constant in the EY experience.
It does align with what we saw earlier, even in that review where someone said the learning made the long hours worthwhile. Are there other reviews that talk about how this demanding schedule impacts life outside of work?
Yes, there's one from July 12th that's pretty blunt. Work-life balance non-existent if you're placed in a project with a tight deadline.
That's a stark assessment. Makes you think about the trade-offs involved. For someone who values a balanced lifestyle, this would be a major consideration.
Absolutely.
So we've got the long hours, but what about salary? Any clear patterns there?
It's a bit mixed on compensation. Some reviews mention low pay, while others mention competitive salary increases. It suggests there might be variation depending on the role, location, and even individual expectations of what's fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all relative, right? Location, cost of living, those factors matter a lot. But since you're based in Singapore, let's narrow our focus. What do the Singapore-specific reviews tell us?
Let's zoom in on Singapore. It's always interesting to see how things vary by location. So focusing on Singapore, we see a similar mix of positives and negatives. One review from November 17th really highlights this. It mentions flexible hours and having nice colleagues as major advantages.
That's encouraging. Even with that demanding workload we've been discussing, there's a sense that the Singapore office offers some flexibility and a positive team environment. But I imagine it's not all sunshine and roses. What about those less glowing perspectives?
Of course, we have to look at both sides. Just one day later, on November 18th, another employee in Singapore posted a review, and they pointed out the heavy workload and tight deadlines.
It seems like that heavy workload is a pretty consistent theme no matter where you are in the EY world. Makes you wonder, is this just the nature of Big Four accounting, or is there something more specific to EY's culture? From your perspective, does this align with what you'd expect from a firm like EY in a competitive market like Singapore?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have to think about the context, right? Singapore is known for its demanding work culture. So to some extent, these themes aren't surprising, especially for a major player in finance. But even within that context, EY's reputation for long hours seems to stand out.
So it's something to be aware of.
Definitely. Potential employees need to factor that in.
It seems like we're seeing a pattern here. EY offers these incredible opportunities, for learning, career growth, working with top talent. But it comes at a price. And that price seems to be, well, personal time, work-life balance.
It's a trade-off for sure.
Based on what we've seen, what advice would you give someone who's trying to decide if EY is right for them?
You have to be really honest with yourself about your priorities.
Yeah.
What are your non-negotiables, the things you absolutely need in a workplace to be happy and, maintain some balance? Is it flexibility?
Yeah.
A supportive team? Once you've figured out your must-haves, then you can start to see if EY really fits with those.
That's great advice. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a big-name company, but you have to make sure it fits your life too. But even with all this info, we're still working with a limited set of reviews. How can our listener really get a full picture of what it's like day-to-day at EY?
You're right, these are just a starting point.
Yeah.
To really get it, you have to dive into the full range of experiences on platforms like Glassdoor.
So we're sending our listener on an EY detective mission.
Exactly. Go explore those Glassdoor reviews firsthand. Read through different perspectives, good and bad, and pay attention to the details that resonate with you. Look for recurring themes, patterns in how people describe things, and remember the context of each review.
It's like putting together a puzzle, right? Building a complete picture of what it's like to work there.
Right. But it's important to be objective, too.
Yeah, how can our listener avoid just focusing on reviews that confirm what they already think?
It's all about critical thinking. Don't just read the words at face value. Think about the reviewer's background, their role, how long they were at EY. All those things shape their view. Pay attention to specific examples, stories they tell. Those often reveal more than just general comments.
It's like being a journalist, verifying your sources, understanding their biases. But in the end, isn't it all subjective? What one person loves, another might hate.
Yeah, that's true. There's no one right answer about a company like EY. What matters is finding the right fit for you. So think about what's most important in a job. What are your deal breakers? What kind of environment helps you thrive?
So we're asking our listener to create their own personal EY scorecard, weighing the pros and cons based on what matters to them.
Exactly.
Okay, with all that said, are there any overall takeaways, any universal truths about EY that we can confidently share?
One thing that's consistently true, and the reviews back this up, is that EY demands a lot from its employees. It's high pressure, fast-paced, long hours are often expected. The rewards can be big, but you need to know what you're getting into.
So, not for the faint of heart or those looking for a relaxed 9 to 5. It sounds like EY is where you go to push yourself, learn from the best, build a serious career, but it also requires some sacrifices.
Yeah, it's a choice, a balancing act. But regardless of what you decide, there's one question I think is really worth considering, especially for those thinking about EY.
All right, lay it on us. What's the question that's going to stay with our listener?
Given this demanding culture at EY, all the long hours, how can someone proactively set boundaries, manage expectations to make sure they don't burn out and can maintain some kind of work-life balance?
That's a big one. Goes beyond just time management tips. It's about knowing your limits, advocating for yourself, even in a high-pressure environment.
Yeah.
But before we go too deep on that, let's wrap up this part of our EY deep dive and encourage our listener to keep exploring this complex, fascinating world. It feels like we've only just dipped our toes into the EY ocean, you know? There's so much more to uncover.
You're right. These reviews give us a glimpse, a starting point. The real journey is when our listener takes what we've discussed and thinks about their own experiences, goals, and values.
So what's next for someone who's intrigued by EY but wants to know more before making any decisions?
Don't be afraid to reach out. Talk to people who've actually worked at EY. Connect with your network. Reach out to current or former employees on LinkedIn. Go to events where EY folks might be.
Network, network, network.
Exactly. Ask them about their time there, the good, the bad, to live up to the hype.
Getting those diverse perspectives is so important, those real stories.
For sure. What would you ask if you were in their shoes? What are the key things you'd want to know?
I'd focus on what matters most to me. If it's work-life balance, I'd ask about the hours, weekend work. How does EY approach well-being?
Makes sense.
If it's career growth, I'd ask about development opportunities, mentorship. What are the typical career paths?
Good questions. But don't forget the less glamorous stuff, too.
Right. Like, what's the office vibe? How supportive is management? What's the overall culture like?
Those things matter, too. It's about getting the whole picture, not just the shiny parts.
Because a job can look great on paper, but the reality might be very different.
Exactly. And remember, every experience is unique. What works for one person might not work for another.
That's so true.
The important thing is to gather information, weigh the pros and cons, and ultimately make a decision that feels right for you.
It's almost like we're asking our listeners to become EY anthropologists, you know.
EY anthropologist, I like that.
Studying the culture, the rules, the things they don't tell you in the brochures. But even if you're not thinking about a career at EY, these reviews can be so eye-opening.
Oh, definitely. It's a window into the Big Four world, The challenges, the rewards of a demanding but potentially amazing career.
It's about learning and expanding our understanding of different industries and career paths.
Exactly. It's about curiosity and sparking those conversations.
Yeah.
And challenging ourselves to think critically about the choices we make in our own professional lives.
Well said. Well, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into EY. We've covered a lot, from the supportive culture to those concerns about work-life balance.
It's been great exploring this with you.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Remember, this isn't the end. Keep asking those tough questions, keep looking for different perspectives, and build a work life that you truly love.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And until next time, keep exploring.